Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be doing my spoiler review for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. If you want to see my more general thoughts on this film without getting into the nitty-gritty details of the character arcs in this film, go check out my non-spoiler review. I talk a lot about Sam Raimi and talk a lot about the horror tone that this movie has, and I love all those different things, but this movie is sort of back and forth on me in terms of the characters. There's some characters that I think is some of the best character work in the MCU, and others that just feel very short-handed, and it can prevent me from absolutely loving this movie, even though it's that horror genre that I love. It's very trippy sci-fi that I love, and very fantastical, like Doctor Strange and his magic can do, and it's a lot of fun, and it's just one giant chase sequence that has so much energy because of Sam Raimi. There is a lot to love in this film, but after watching it for a second time, focusing in on those character arcs, I have a bit of problems with kind of the overall feeling of what I had with Doctor Strange's character and of course America Chavez's character and their arcs together. But Wanda absolutely stole the show for me. Let's just start off with Wanda. I love where she started off in this film, and I can see some arguments being like, okay, she is kind of right off the bat this villain, and we didn't really get to that earned point in WandaVision. She seemed more like a hero in that show, but the loss of her children and that grief that she's dealing with in that situation that is completely separate from the Vision thing is something that we didn't explore in WandaVision. We saw that in the after credit scene of her using the Darkhold, and that Darkhold having such a hold on her, having such a just powerful, just putting her off on the deep end, and she is completely enraged and focused and dead set on getting back to her children, using America Chavez's power to go through the multiverse to find a version of her life where she has children. And there's a lot of beautiful moments when she's dreaming about her kids. You get to hear the WandaVision theme. I love hearing that theme because I love WandaVision, and you get to see her wake up, and there's a really quiet moment with the camera turning around of her laying in bed, and it is just such a tragic and very sad moment. Again, she stole the movie for me this entire time. I love that moment where they're in that tree field and Doctor Strange says like, oh, this is all real, this is not an illusion, it seems like you're on a good path, and then that whole thing flips the script and everything burns away, and you get to see the reality and how Wanda's power is being used intentionally is so much more dangerous than what it was unintentionally in WandaVision. I love this complete dynamic that they have kind of created with her character. In Age of Ultron, she was such kind of a side character, kind of in the background, and now she is a full-blown villain in the MCU after being a really fun and entertaining hero in WandaVision. She has gone through such a journey in this series. And when it comes to the horror elements in this movie, it is all Wanda, whether she's possessing these monsters to have some fun chase sequences with some monsters, or whether it's her actually possessing other versions of herself in the multiverse to chase after Doctor Strange and America Chavez throughout this film. It is always so entertaining. That attack and siege on Cumberbatch was like, there is no going back for Wanda at this point. She is somewhat redeemable and forgivable for WandaVision, but at this point, how do you forgive her? How do you redeem her? And is she even coming back? We'll get into that in a minute, but I love how intense she was in this Cumberbatch attack. She was still, being very reserved. She's being very held back. I love when she's talking to Strange up in the air and she says that this is her being reasonable, and that is just terrifying. Her performance in this entire sequence was amazing. When she gets trapped in the mirror dimension and she's using the reflections to break into the real world and pulling these people into the puddles, that was amazing. It was very fun Sam Raimi horror. The camera work in all of this was incredible. There's so much to love in terms of the filmmaking on display in these action sequences and in these haunting sequences. There's even a haunted house sequence when she's trying to essentially, possess the body of her other self in the multiverse using this dream walker kind of spell. And I love the idea of the Dreamwalker spell. So essentially how this works is she's using the Darkhold to use this spell to essentially find different versions of herself in the multiverse. She can scroll through all these different worlds and find the one that she wants to do, and she has to use like this so Evil Dead possession scene where she's kind of the ghost inside the house, and you see Wanda kind of walking, you see some lights flickering, you see the camera swirling in and out of frame over to like behind the staircase, and it is just so well done. This is the Sam Raimi stuff that I'm so glad that the studio let him do. Have a full-on haunted house sequence with Wanda trying to possess herself. It is so entertaining. And again, her entire arc of her trying to get to her kids, I really did I was kind of rooting for her at some points because her story has been so tragic up until this point. You're like, just give her the power. If she can settle down a little bit, if you can try to convince her to have America Chavez bring you to where you want to go, like she does at the end of this movie, and not trying to steal the power and kill her. Instead, like, Wanda, just just try to do the right thing, and she is just so far gone. And when you get into these other worlds, and when she possesses her other self and she's attacking the Illuminati, which I think this scene will be extremely controversial for a lot of people, which is probably the biggest spoiler in this film, is the whole Illuminati thing. So the team of the Illuminati is Black Bolt, who was actually the same actor who was in Inhumans, which was universally hated. So I'm kind of shocked that Marvel took those. And in my opening night's audience, some people even cheered for him. I can't believe people recognize who that was, or if they watch Inhumans, or if they're just, I don't know, I was kind of surprised by that. The next member is, of course, Captain Carter, from not the one from What If, but another What If version of if Captain Carter was the one, or Agent Carter was the one who became the super soldier serum and became Captain Carter. And I love seeing her in live action. That was really entertaining. You have, of course, Charles Xavier being one of the members. You have Patrick Stewart himself coming back. You even get to hear the 1977 X-Men theme, which is really cool. So a lot of cheers for him as well. And then the only member of the Illuminati that didn't get cheers, or I guess two of them, was, of course, you have Chiwetel Ejiofor's character as Chad Baron Mordo, I think is what they call it. I think his name was Chad. But of course you have Mordo back, and he is great in this role, and it's not the exact same one that you saw in Doctor Strange 1. So there's a lot of loose threads from that first Doctor Strange that have not been picked up. It's mentioned in this movie, but we never get to see that actual confrontation. And I'll get into that in a minute in terms of like Doctor Strange's arc and some of the situations that he finds himself in. But him, and of course you have Lashana Lynch as Captain Marvel, the only ones who didn't get cheers. And I think some people are kind of bummed that it wasn't Tom Cruise as Superior Iron Man, and I never thought it was. It was clearly Lashana Lynch in the trailers, and I can't believe so many people are convinced that it's going to be Tom Cruise as Iron Man, which would be a cool little Easter egg in terms of the behind the scenes of Iron Man, but at the same time, who cares? And of course, the biggest surprise in this Illuminati group is, of course, Reed Richards' Fantastic Four, Mr. Fantastic himself, being played by John Krasinski. He got the biggest applause out of everybody. Everybody was freaking out about him being in this role. And I think there's two possibilities with him being in this movie. It's either one, it's just for the fans, for the fan service of the fans, just manifesting him being cast with this, fan-made image of him as Mr. Fantastic, fan casting. He didn't really say he was too interested in the role. Same thing with Emily Blunt. She really did not have any interest in Sue Storm. And so that makes me think that this was just for the fans in this one universe, and it's just going to be that. And once we get to our MCU version, our sacred timeline version of the Fantastic Four, it'll be a different cast member, because this Fantastic Four, this Mr. Fantastic, has already gone through his life, essentially. He already has his powers. He already has a high position in the Illuminati. He already has all these things. He has a family. He has children. He's married to Sue Storm. And so we don't really get that connection with this version of that character. Could John Krasinski be directing the Fantastic Four movie, and that's why John Watts left that project? Very possible. I think that is a very possible option for that movie. But part of me really does feel like this is just going to be it for him, because all of these members of the Illuminati, besides Baron Mordo, all get murdered brutally by Wanda. The most brutal, of course, being Black Bolt having his mouth sealed shut, and then he just blows up. His brain just blows up inside his mind when he tries to speak. That was so shocking and brutal. I loved it. And the more disappointing one was, of course, Reed Richards was kind of turned into a bunch of hot dog fingers from Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is kind of bummed that we didn't get to see him fight. But my rationalization for that is probably that the MCU didn't really know how they wanted to show Reed Richards in action just yet. They wanted to leave that to whoever ends up directing the Fantastic Four movies, because that's a lot of creative decisions that you're going to be giving to Sam Raimi to kind of set the tone for this type of character and this type of action in the MCU. So save it for that movie, save it for that director and that filmmaker using their vision, I think, is probably the smarter option. But in terms of a fan perspective, I can see that being very disappointing. Captain Carter literally gets ripped in half by her own shield, and Lashana Lynch gets blown up to pieces and have a statue fall on top of her, in terms of just Wanda just wreaking havoc in the Illuminati headquarters. It was such a cool scene. And I think that entire Illuminati thing was of course a red herring. It was to get people excited for the movie. I kind of wish we never knew about the Illuminati being in this movie. They never showed that sort of stuff in the trailers, because it would have been so much more of a surprise, and I think it would be a lot less letdown with them all just dying. But what it did serve was a great moment of showing that Scarlet Witch is unstoppable at this point. She just took out the entire Illuminati, which is a snap of her fingers, really just completely effortless. Even in the mind, having a fight with Charles Xavier, he goes into her mind, tries to pull out the actual Wanda Maximoff that is being suppressed by our Wanda from our universe, and he tries to, and then she just sneaks up behind him and snaps his neck in half. And just like, Patrick Stewart as Xavier has died once again for the third time in live action movies, and that is just like, Wow. And at this point, she is even more just relentlessly going after Strange and America Chavez until you get to the point where she captures Chavez. She brings them back. She brings her back to like the entire temple, essentially, that is the creation of the Darkhold, all the scriptures on the walls, all the carvings on the walls, saying all the spells that she needs. She's at this single place, and she's just trying so hard to get the power. And so now let's switch over to Doctor Strange and America Chavez's arc in this movie. And I think that the Strange arc is a lot of mixed stuff for me, because I like the idea of what they were going for. Of course, you had the thing with him and Rachel McAdams and that relationship that was severed because of the 5-year blip into. He sees his, love of his life being married off to somebody else, and it's heartbreaking for him. He says that he's happy, even though he very clearly is not, and that comes back into play later on when he encounters different versions of himself. I love the idea that dreams are just parts of different multiverses and different versions of himself. Of course, when you see the evil Doctor Strange kind of saying that he pushes other Stranges off of the tops of high buildings, and that is why that dream is so reoccurring for him. It's just a lot of cool ideas of what he's doing. And when he meets the different Rachel McAdams in a different universe, they try to pick up like, oh, we are kind of in the same spots. We never got to figure out what we were in our perspective, in our respective universes. And so is there something between these two characters? And I just couldn't really feel too much. I love them together. Their chemistry is great, and you really get to see that Strange really loves this character. He loves Rachel McAdams' character so much that in any universe he's just in love with her, and you really do feel that with this movie and with that one What If episode, even more so than the first Doctor Strange movie, where they were actually trying to build that relationship even more. The problem is it's a completely different Christine from another universe that has no sort of history with our Doctor Strange. So I was wondering, like, I can't really feel too much besides from Strange's perspective saying that he loves every version of Christine in any universe, but from Christine's side, I can see her being like, yeah, it would be nice to see your universe and cause an incursion, but I gotta go. I don't know who you are. I'm out of here. So I completely understand that aspect. And also with Doctor Strange's character, with him, not really knowing who he is, being always the guy who wants to carry the knife with him. I did enjoy his arc of going from like, even if it's a different version of his character being like, I need to steal this power, or when he's yelling at America Chavez of not being able to control her power, and his arc eventually by the end of the movie saying that, okay, I don't always need to do this because I'm afraid to not have control. And so when he gives that control to Chavez and kind of motivates her to use her powers in a very positive way, I really, really like that, building her up to eventually defeat Wanda and showing Wanda her life, or her other version of herself with her kids, and her kids being absolutely terrified of her. That was definitely the most emotional moment of this movie for me. More so for Wanda than for Chavez. I was glad that she was able to build up her character enough to be able to use her powers intentionally and having some sort of control over it. But at the same time, she was just kind of a MacGuffin in this movie, and we didn't get too much of her. In terms of her relationship with Strange, I really like that kind of conflict that they built together with these two very different types of people, and this sort of mentorship type of relationship that's very different from Strange and Peter Parker in No Way Home, but it still kind of has that sort of mentorship type of kind of role that he has with this character. And I just wish they had maybe one or two more conversations with each other of them kind of building this conflict even more. I did really like the scene where he saw America Chavez's past, and seeing how she lost her parents, and she is so convinced that her parents are dead because how dangerous the multiverse is, and him saying maybe one day you actually will find it. I really like that scene a lot. And of course Strange yelling at her and having to stop himself. I just wanted maybe one or two of those moments to kind of build that relationship a little bit more, to make that moment where Zombie Strange is talking to Chavez, saying that you can do this. It just needed to have just a little more punch to it. And that could have also built better if, we had, Strange going through a bigger arc in this film, because again, I think his arc is fine in some aspects. His thing with Christine, I feel kind of distanced from. His thing with Mordo, even more so. It's like, that's not the same Mordo, so we don't get that same satisfaction of him fighting Mordo in this movie as we thought we would at the end of Doctor Strange. Again, all these loose ends that we're trying to pick up, I just don't know about that. So instead of just this movie being called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I honestly think this movie works better if it were called Scarlet Witch in the Multiverse of Madness, because this really is her moment. Like I said, when America Chavez shows her the other universe and she sees her kids be absolutely terrified of her, that was so incredibly emotional. It broke my heart to see Wanda snap at her kids and her realizing what she has become, and having the other Wanda go up to her and just have a moment of like, you have to go somewhere where you can be loved, and this is not that place. And that was just such a powerful moment. I love Wanda in this film so much. She's now easily one of my favorite characters in the MCU, in general with WandaVision, and now especially with this, I really do think she's, if not the best villain, one of the best villains in the MCU, because she was terrifying in this movie. Her arc was very emotional, and I loved how they wrapped up her character being like, okay, I've been consumed by the Darkhold, I'm going to destroy it completely in every single universe, and we don't know if she made it out alive. And I do think there are some loose threads from WandaVision still, especially when it comes to Vision and White Vision, when he flew off having the memories, and of course the Vision in WandaVision saying that it stands to reason that we'll meet each other once again because he had all these different forms. They're going to meet again eventually, so I don't think she's gone forever. And the last thing I want to talk about in this review is just all my favorite moments of this film, because I have a lot. Again, the dream walking stuff was a lot of fun. I loved seeing Wanda do that, and seeing the hypocritical Strange do that in terms of possessing a body and having all these little like demon souls, you know, spawning to try to stop him, because it's like against the rules to possess a dead body, and so he's able to kind of have all these different souls and kind of control them to be like his cape, and he flies to fight Wanda. That was so imaginative and cool, and just like great. The zombie effects and just the visual effects in general in this movie were spot on. Some of the best I've seen in the MCU. I really loved it a lot, and seeing that zombie Strange was really cool. Again, the horror scenes, of course, the haunted house scene with Wanda trying to possess her other Wanda in that universe was really cool, and the mirror scene at the beginning of the movie of Cumberbatch. There's so many moments in this movie in terms of the style, in terms of the Sam Raimi of it all, in terms of like the Bruce Campbell cameo, of course, in this movie of him fighting his hand like in Evil Dead 2. I ate that stuff up, and with all that, and with Wanda's arc in general, it really does hold this movie up to me being a really strong MCU entry. I just wish that the bond between America Chavez and Doctor Strange himself was a little bit stronger, and Strange's arc in general being a little bit stronger, because it really did pale in comparison to the incredible arc that Wanda Maximoff had as the villain of this movie. So that'll be it for my spoiler review for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. What did you guys think of it? Did you love Sam Raimi's style and direction, all the eyeballs and all the zoom-ins and all the whipping camera moves? Did you love the campy one-liners like when Rachel McAdams says, "Go back to hell" to these little demon soul things? I ate that stuff up. Did you guys hate that? Did you guys were disappointed by the Illuminati stuff? Let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed my review and my thoughts on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And of course, subscribe for more reviews just like this one. So thanks everyone for watching. I hope to see you all in my next one.